And welcome back, everyone. Today we will be covering environment design tools, how to edit 3D objects, prefabs, and materials in Unity. Without further ado, let's get started. First, you are going to want to open the project with a blank scene and then navigate to the top left corner. Scrolling through, File is where you open and save projects, as well as contains build settings. Build settings are when we're ready to take our project in Unity and bring it into the world where people can start playing it. That is the last step. That is step 10. Edit is where you can create, duplicate, and all around manipulate the assets that you have. Assets is for general creation and implementation of components in your scene, as well as importing whatever packages you wish to import. The Game Object tab is for making default assets for your scene, along with many different components within the scene. Components go over the more advanced assets you would like to implement, like colliders and meshes, and you can then look for more windows other than the inspector, such as a good tool like Pro Builder. Under those options, you have different tools for moving objects within the scene and manipulating the scene itself. You can use the Pan tool, which can allow you to move around and view the scene. The Move tool allows you to move assets within the scene. Rotate allows you to, as the name suggests, rotate objects within the scene. You can have your resizing tool change the form of the objects that are within the scene. These tools are for finer manipulation of an object in the scene. You can also download custom tools as well. We won't be dealing with that because that is a huge topic that we do not have time for. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about creating and editing a simple game object in the scene. First, you're going to want to go back up to the Game Object tab at the top and hover over the 3D Object tab. Just to start, let's make a cube. You can make whatever you want, but I'm going to make a cube. Once you select a object for manipulation at the top left-hand corner, it will appear along with the tool you have selected. You can see arrows here. You can then select the different tools which are under the Options tab at the top left, or simply use the W key to move the object, the E key to rotate, the R key to change the size of the object, and so forth. These are the basic manipulation tools, and it's good to get used to the hotkey. Remember, W-E-R. Your fingers are probably going to be on that constantly. Now let's zoom in and show you the object using the Pan tool. Its hotkey is the middle mouse button. It's also the hand symbol. As you can see, I'm moving, rotating, and resizing the object in the scene. Here, I am just setting up a simple plane for a background for the environment. An important note is that you want to keep aware of what axis you're in the scene. This tool here can help switch views and snap to your own desired axes. You can also rename your objects in the inspector at the top, or you can right-click the object in the hierarchy. You can rotate an object with the snaps by holding down Control and then rotating on the axis you want. This is very, very useful, especially if you want to make sure everything's nice and even. Over here is the inspector, where you will do most of your editing and component additions. These numbers here represent the transforms the object has undergone. You can do very fine-tuned manipulation here. It's good to know that these exist. These numbers go up and down according to position, rotation, and scale. Now I will talk a little bit about prefabricated assets, prefabs, and how to create them. First, you are going to want to make a folder for your prefabs, as I already have done, as you can see here. You can make a new folder by right-clicking, hitting New, and create a new folder, and then renaming it in the inspector, Prefabs. I'm going to just create a simple level out of these prefabs that we have. As you can see, I'm just placing the objects into the inspector. You can also drag it into the scene, but it will not go to the object's already assigned position. Whenever you want to make an environment, always make sure you have colliders on your assets, or your player will fall straight through them. Colliders are sort of things that prevent other things that are triggered on those colliders from moving through them, or when they hit those colliders, it activates something that your code has told it to activate. Now that I have a simple platform done, I'm going to look at one of these prefabs. You can do that by selecting your asset and opening the prefab. Here is a new pocket scene where it is only isolating your prefab. This means that you can edit the different parts of your prefab as you see fit. Once you're done, then you can go back to the scene by hitting this little arrow in the top left of your hierarchy. So let's create a prefab. Just to start off simply, you're going to want to make a shape by going to your Game Object tab and hitting 3D Object. So here I have a cube. To duplicate, I can select an object and go to the Duplicate tab or hit Ctrl D to duplicate my object. Once the object is duplicated, I'm going to have to pull it out with the Move tool. It is wise to rename your duplicates if they are in different places within your scene so that the numbering doesn't confuse you, but you can see that it auto-incremented it with a number. I've made a stack of blocks, and I can now select them all. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to create an empty game object, and I'm going to want to drag all of those blocks into it. And then I'm going to grab the empty game object and pull it into the Prefabs folder. A prefab is a prefabricated object that is going to be very unique to your project because it's only located inside your project. You can then just drag that prefab out of this folder and it will always keep that setup that you have made. Once the prefab is made, the name of it turns blue. If you want your prefab to change at all, if you change your prefab at all, it will change every other instance of that prefab in your scene, making it easier to change one thing instead of everything. A good example of this is a tree. So say you put a tree in your scene. If you want to edit all the trees that look like that in your level, you can just change the prefab and it will make that change for every single tree. If you want to delete your prefab, you can. However, be warned that it will break every single instance of that prefab throughout your project. Once it's deleted, it's gone. If you want it back, you're going to have to remake it. And now for more management stuff. I know it's not everyone's favorite thing, but keeping your project nice and clean is the core to success. You do not want to lose anything. You don't want people to constantly be asking you where all of your stuff is if you're working on a team. So, first things first, we're going to go over to our hierarchy, and in there we find our light, we find our camera, and now I'm adding a bunch of prefabs in there, a bunch of level assets. Now this is a problem, because now if I have a bunch of them, it's all cluttered and looks gross and it's all misorganized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to drag all of my prefabs in there. And I can name this empty game object whatever I want for organizational purposes, but now I can close down that empty game object so that everything is nice and neat, and all of those things that can be grouped together are in that one little pocket area. And whenever I need to find platforms, I can open this up. Now we're going to talk a little bit about simple materials, shaders, and textures. First, you're going to want to make sure you have a folder for materials and a folder for textures. As you can see, I already have some materials. These materials can be just dragged onto an object in your scene or added to it through the inspector. Your materials folder is where you have all of your textures that have been linked up to materials. Most objects in the scene won't just take textures, you have to link them to a material. To create a basic material, you're going to have to right-click and then go to Create and then go to Material. Make sure you're in the Materials folder or else your material is going to get lost and you're never going to find it again. Once you have done that, you're going to have a default blank material. You can rename it. In the inspector here at the right-hand side, we see that we can change the color, we can change the shininess, and we can change a bunch of other things. We can also attach textures onto the material at this time. Once you're done making your awesome material, you can drag it onto whatever object you want to apply it to. Now we're going to look at saving scenes and making scenes. So scenes are basically levels. Sometimes they're main menus and things like that, but kind of think of them as if every time there is a load between one part of the game to another, that's going to be a different scene. You can name your scene whatever you want, but first you're going to have to go up to the left-hand corner and hit File and then Save Scene. Make sure you save it in the Scenes folder. If you save it anywhere else, it's going to get lost. Once you've done that, you can go and switch scenes. Always save your current scene before going to a new one. If you don't do that, everything that you have been working on is going to be gone. Make sure you save. To switch scenes, go to your Scenes folder, select the scene, and then double-click on it to open it. Alternatively, you can go File, Open, and open the scene that way. This is just a scene I've been working on for an upcoming level that we're going to make together. You can do whatever you want, go ahead and play around a little bit, but for the next step in the tutorial, you can work ahead by setting up your own scene and inserting the different assets that we have provided you with. Thank you so much for watching. Our next episode will deal with how to implement the player character and all the animations behind it. Don't worry, it's not that hard. We have the character and the animations done for you. You don't have to know how to do all that. If you want to delve into environment design and tools in more detail, please check out the following links. Hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.